It's better to keep fighting than to sign a peace agreement with the Russians. This is the statement made by the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. He said that Ukraine would rather continue fighting than agree to an unfavorable peace agreement. According to the president of Ukraine, the United States is currently trying in every possible way to persuade Ukraine to sign a peace proposal that is completely unfavorable for our country. Negotiations are indeed at the deadlock right now, since Russia is not giving up on its maximalist goals. And Putin continues attacks on peaceful cities in Ukraine. At the same time, for the next round of negotiations in Geneva, which will take place on February 17th to 18th, Russia is once again sending its pseudo-historian Medinsky, which indicates a lowering of the status of the negotiations. But it's not only Russia that's having an unconstructive dialogue. The United States has refused to provide security guarantees to Ukraine until a peace agreement is signed. That is, Donald Trump is simply suggesting that we take his word for it, that after the peace agreement he definitely won't betray and will definitely provide security guarantees. Zelensky himself also made a number of very provocative statements, for example, that the window of opportunity for signing a peace agreement is closing, and if nothing happens now, then the war will continue for a long time. My name is Alexei Pechi. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, like this episode, and leave any comment you want. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechi News. The link to it is in the description of this video. So, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, stated that Ukraine would rather continue fighting than agree to an unfavorable peace agreement. He made such a loud and already scandalous statement in an interview with the American magazine The Atlantic. Zelensky is confident that for Trump there is no greater victory than ending the war between Russia and Ukraine, and for Trump the most advantageous situation is to end the war before the United States midterm elections. But Zelensky himself will not rush to sign a failed peace agreement and would rather continue the war. But let's discuss this interview in more detail because there were some very important words there, not just about this. The Atlantic's article begins with these words, quote, Zelensky addresses Donald Trump in a language the American president understands. If Trump wants to strengthen his reputation as a peacemaker and increase his chances of winning in the midterm congressional elections, he should take advantage of this moment to put an end to Russia's war against Ukraine, otherwise Ukraine will be left with the war and Trump without an election victory. By now, Zelensky understands Trump's motives very well, but he is also a realist when it comes to the likelihood that Donald Trump will actually force the Russians to compromise. But, as mentioned in the article, some members of Volodymyr Zelensky's inner circle are starting to worry that his chances of reaching a peace agreement are diminishing, and that Ukraine will suffer from years of unending war if a peace agreement is not reached this spring. But Zelensky, and I quote The Atlantic, said that he would rather not make any peace deal at all than force his people to accept a bad one. Even after 4 years of fierce war, he says he is ready to continue fighting if necessary to achieve a just and lasting peace. Ukraine is not losing, he insists persistently when I asked him to assess his position on the battlefield. This is Schuster speaking, the very journalist who is conducting the interview, but next I will actually give another quote, this time from journalist Simon Schuster, who was with Zelensky in the president's office. Zelensky believes that Ukraine has achieved success both here in the capital of Ukraine and in the east, where the war has practically reached a stalemate. By using an army of drones to fill the gaps in infantry lines, Ukraine has slowed down Russia's advance on many parts of the front, and in some areas it has stopped altogether. For almost 2 years, the invaders have been trying to capture the mining town of Pokrovsk, a railway hub with a pre-war population of only about 60,000 people, and they still haven't managed to take it completely. According to Ukrainian estimates, every square kilometer occupied by Russia costs its army more than 100 soldiers killed or seriously wounded. And the average monthly losses reach up to 35,000 servicemen. The newly appointed defense minister of Zelensky, Mikhail Fedorov, announced in January a plan to increase Russian losses to 50,000 people per month, which, according to him, will exceed the number of new recruits. And throughout the interview, Zelensky repeatedly said that he would not accept a deal on humiliating terms, while Trump chose a slightly different approach. He is in a hurry to make a deal and doesn't care at all about the terms. And now everything has come down to the midterm elections in the United States Congress. As Simon Schuster writes, the American election campaign has turned into a ticking clock in their negotiation rooms. The Russians know the White House will soon be distracted by congressional elections. Until that moment, there is an opportunity, and the Russians are trying to convince Trump to give up Ukraine. But then Trump takes steps that ruin the possibility of reaching a peace agreement. Unfortunately, European and American officials on the sidelines of the Munich Security Summit stated that the United States has made it clear to Ukraine that they will not enter into security guarantee agreements to protect against future Russian aggression until Kyiv and Moscow reach a mutual agreement to end the war. But such a sequence puts Ukraine in a position where, after signing a peace agreement with the Russians, Trump could refuse security guarantees and Ukraine would no longer be able to withdraw from the deal with the Russians, leaving it without any guarantees at all. And here, Simon Schuster reminds us that after the negotiations in Abu Dhabi, the Ukrainian negotiators reported that the Kremlin was not going to make any concessions regarding Ukrainian territory, and the American mediators were losing patience. The Ukrainians felt that time was running out. In the coming weeks, as the election campaign takes up more and more of Trump's attention, he may decide that negotiations have become a political losing game for him. Then he may walk away, placing the blame for the failure of diplomacy on the intransigence of one or both warring sides. And here Zelensky says, quote, "Our chosen tactic is to make sure the Americans don't think we want to continue the war. That's why we started supporting their proposals in any format that would speed up the process." And here Schuster says that supposedly Zelensky's advisors told him that Ukraine might be ready to make the toughest concession. This is giving up control over the lands in the eastern part of Donetsk region. But for that, a referendum is needed, and for a referendum, security guarantees from the United States are required. And here we are at an impasse again, now quoting Bloomberg. Despite the risk of losing Donald Trump's attention as a mediator, Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky says he will firmly stand by his main demand. The first step toward peace should be a guarantee from the United States and Europe that after a ceasefire is established, they will protect Ukraine from any future attacks by Russia. Otherwise, for many Ukrainians, a ceasefire will seem painful, merely giving Russia an opportunity to prepare for another invasion. Zelensky acknowledged that the main issues related to the United States security guarantees document remain unresolved. For example, are the United States ready to shoot down incoming missiles over Ukraine if Russia breaks the peace and resumes bombing civilians? But domestic politics also played a role here. Zelensky, for example, stated that the dismissal of the head of the presidential office, Andriy Yermak, was supposedly not related to corruption in any way. Well, as he himself said, quote, "I had my own reasons, but you know, Ukrainians would still like to know what those reasons are." But as for negotiations, Zelensky convincingly demonstrated his willingness to support Trump's peace initiatives even when they seemed unfeasible or poorly thought out. Supposedly, that was the tactic. Zelensky considered the idea of turning part of the Donetsk region into a free economic zone that would not be controlled by either Russian or Ukrainian forces, although this idea is also very utopian. But Zelensky says, quote, "Sometimes I get the impression that Americans are thinking about what else they could offer Ukrainians just to see if they would refuse. We are not afraid of anything. Are we ready for elections? We are ready. Are we ready for a referendum? We are ready." In general, that's how the interview turned out. As you noticed, many people focused on the part where Zelensky says that war is better than bad negotiations. Write your opinion in the comments about how you feel regarding such a statement by the Ukrainian president. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinion and conclusions in the comments under this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you found this episode interesting and useful, you can support our channel's work with your donation or subscription using the links and details in the description of this video. I would be grateful for any support from you. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.